The Jewish festival of Passover has been celebrated in Ireland since the first Jews arrived here over 1,000 years ago. Since then, a small Jewish community has become a well-established part of Irish life.
Jews in Ireland are a little bit of a curiosity. The community here basically started building, it was people fleeing from pogroms in Lithuania in the late 19th century. And maybe 4,500 people. The community here was never a big community. They lived mainly in the north side of the city and then slowly kind of migrated to the south. And where we are now, which is the Jewish Museum on Walworth Road, this would have been one of the early synagogues. But now the Orthodox community has moved from here and is now based in Terenure.
The Jews integrated well and kept their faith traditions alive. Some took an active part in politics. Ben Briscoe and his father, descendants of Lithuanian immigrants, were TDs from 1927 until 2002. Both had also been Lord Mayor of Dublin.
When I became Lord Mayor, the Chief Herald, a man called Begley, was kind enough to come up to the Mansion House and advise me. He said, I'll redesign it. And now the fascinating thing here is Dublin and Israel share the same colours. The freedom and justice pages I decided to put in English. It was the great thrill of my life to be so complimented by the electorate, the people who trusted me for all those years, and my father.
But there were also thriving Jewish communities outside of Dublin, particularly in Limerick and Cork. Irish filmmaker Louis Marcus was born in Cork.
Cork was a small and cosy Jewish community, maybe 40 to 50 families. We didn't have the numbers for a Jewish school, so I went to a lay Catholic secondary school where I really got what I would call a liberal education at a time when Ireland, maybe late 40s, early 50s, wasn't all that liberal. My father had been trained as a glass cutter. When he married and settled in Cork, he started as a framer, and at that time the only pictures people wanted on their walls were holy pictures. And I remember as a kid a succession of Sacred Hearts and perpetual suckers. I think my father kind of helped to preserve Catholicism in the south of Ireland.
Emilia Steen is a photographer whose parents were both born and bred in Dublin.
My mother's family lived in Leinster Road, and my father's family lived off the South Circular Road. And my father had the well-known Steen opticians, which I followed into practice with him, and he was quite a Dublin character and fast-witted and loved to engage with people. I grew up in a kosher home, and what that means is that the dietary rules were strictly adhered to, and my mother would make a beautiful Sabbath meal which I wouldn't dream of missing.
One of the most important Jewish religious festivals is Passover.
Passover this year falls on Friday night, the 3rd of April, that's this Friday, and it commemorates events that happened to the Jewish people just over 3,000 years ago, where they're enslaved in Egypt and they're led by Moses out of slavery and to freedom.
Passover is a kind of a punctuation mark in the Jewish calendar. It's to do with getting together with your family. It's eating a special meal which has been specially prepared.
The preparation for Passover is mainly in the home, and it's mainly in the kitchen. And most traditional families will actually do a complete swap around of the kitchen. So all of the kitchenware and the delf and the cutlery is all put away, and a whole second set comes out, which is for Passover use that's never been in contact with bread or leavened goods.
You give up leavened bread because the Jews fled from Egypt all of a sudden and didn't have time to use the yeast, and you use a thing called matzah. I quite like it. And the trouble is you nibble so much of it you're inclined to put on a lot of weight.
There's a whole different diet for Passover, and so there are the traditional matzah crackers, bitter herbs, and this kind of paste mixture called charoset.
It's not really centred so much in the synagogue, it's mainly centred in the home. There's a plate on the table signifying life and renewal, and it revolves around the meal called the Seder. which is, first of all, a recitation in Hebrew of the story of liberation from slavery in Egypt, then the meal with lots of very distinctive and very attractive foods, and then songs and a general air of hilarity.
All the people in Egypt were feeling pretty low.
Passover is one of the few times in the year that everybody comes together. So it becomes very memorable. It's not just people sitting together, it's actually following a service and eating these special foods. And so it kind of burns memories into you from when you're a child that this is a great event.
The father always sits in the chair with the pillows behind him, and they tell the story through this Jewish book called the Haggadah of the flight from Israel and how God worked his will over the Egyptian people to allow the Jews to escape. It's a great moment of unifying this spirit of being Jewish.
The story of Passover is very literal. It's it's slaves that are being set free, and I think as you mature, you see that reflected, through different societies, through history, either real slavery, or you see people that are slaves to other things, slaves to power, slaves to money, slaves to addictions, and you start to think about what kind of different freedoms there are in life, apart from actual physical freedom from Egypt to Israel.
Most Jews in Ireland have been here for several generations and see themselves as much Irish as they are Jewish.
I didn't feel any different from anyone else. I was Irish by nationality and I was Jewish by religion. Obviously, other people regard me not quite being fully Irish. There was almost an implication in it that you weren't Irish unless you were a Catholic. And of course, this is ridiculous because some of the greatest Irish patriots were of different faiths. The Protestant religion, Wolfe Tone, Robert Emmet, Lord Edward Fitzgerald, all these great heroes of Irish history. Our love for this country is certainly as great as it is for our religion.
I never thought of myself as other or different. I'm an Irish person and my religion is the Jewish faith. I've lived here all my life. I love it. I really have found that over the years I've made a bond with the landscape. So I've had a very rich existence in Ireland.
This year, the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland held a multi-faith event in Terenure Synagogue Hall in Dublin.
It's the coming together of representatives of the Abrahamic faiths. So we have from the Christian community, Muslim community and Jewish community, just together in a social setting, and it's really a very wonderful way of getting to know one another, to remove any kind of prejudice or misconception. The Jewish community here feel very Irish, very part of the Irish community, very well integrated. There is a really interesting similarity because you have lots of Irish people that are living far away from home, and they feel that somewhere in their heart there's a place that they call home, and that's Ireland. The Jewish people have that maybe even in a little stronger sense. The Jewish homeland is of course Israel, but the Jews have been exiled for 2,000 years and they've lived all over in different countries and made their homes there and felt at home there. But always there's that place in their heart that they know that the land of Israel has something very special for the Jewish people.
The Jews for over 2,000 years had no homeland. And I remember a discussion my father had with De Valera. My father said, if 300 years ago the Irish nationalist Catholics were driven out, not just of the six counties, but of the entire island of Ireland, would the Irish, if there were only 10,000 Irish left, have lost the right to return? And De Valera's unequivocal answer was, as long as there was one Irishman, they would never have lost that right.
We are very fortunate people that we live here in Ireland in peacetime. We have roofs over our head, we have food, and I'm very lucky to have citizenship to a country. And the older I get, the more I consider what happened to Jewish people during the Second World War and how fortunate I was that my family were here. I know where all the children in our family are, and they're growing up in front of us, and you sit with them and You hear about their lives and you eat this ritual food and food is passed around the table and there's stories, and it's quite an experience to have that amount of family to be with.